welcome to one part where I had really no idea where to place it, in the theoretical part, in the capture part, or in the post-production part. Certainly not something that I want to split up at all, because this information is critical to know, and it's one of the core elements for the whole course here. So after the theoretical part, I thought I place it, and then everything else is set and done. What I want to discuss here is exposure, and I hear you have an automatic in your camera. Great. I do not want to sound arrogant, but the automatic has no idea what you want to do, and even if you set up an evaluation or on spot metering or whatever, you come maybe a little bit more close, but it's always a relative exposure. It has nothing to do with what you really want to have for texturing. And there exactly is one of the main problems in the whole pipeline. And I certainly will come back to the theme once or more often. The idea is normally that the camera assumes that the average of everything in the scene is a mid-gray, the 0.18 gray card, which is standardizational thought as a 50%, and that's of course not true when you go with RGB values. Put 1 divided by 2.2 as the power of any value, and you will see 0.18 is then 0.458 whatever, certainly not 0.5. And that will vary, of course, based on which color profile you have chosen on the end, because these values move back and forth. So there is not really a certainty, and the only certainty that you can have that you take a gray card, a real gray card. They are 10-20 bucks, and don't touch them with the fingers, because in the moment you have some oily stains on it, they are useless. They need to be handled as something very valuable, because they are the core of your production. They give you the stability that the light that hits the surface here in the background is always neutralized. That's the only way to do it. I have no better idea, even if we talk about the Macbeth chart, which is the next step. And so I sound maybe a little bit harsh, I sound maybe a little bit arrogant here, but I only have in mind to create exactly the values that you want to have in your scene. Something that fits to each other. That's teamwork. Everyone is pulling in the same direction. And that doesn't work when you switch on automatic. Okay, I think I was clear now. So in the moment you have that gray card here in front of the lens, and it should cover exactly your exposure method, nothing above that. Then the camera gets exactly what it wants to have, and we will talk about the gray card in detail as well. It should have from the view axis to the light direction exactly 2/3 to the light direction, 1/3 to the camera, and the resulting angle is then exactly how you have to hold it to get reproducible values, and that is our target here. When you have done this, you get something like this here, and here this little hill is exactly here in the background. I know you won't have a gray card that always fills the whole texture, and to hold a gray card very close to the camera is of course also counterproductive when the light changes from the area where you have your texture and where the gray card is finally held. Maybe you sit under a tree and the texture is in bare sunshine. Then the gray card makes no sense at all. So this is the way to measure the world. And it has of course a downside, because normally you can make maybe an exposure that fits your whole texture in one step. When you lock your camera with the 50% or mid-gray idea, 0.18, then sometimes the texture, even low in dynamic range, will not be able to be captured in one step. That is why I normally talk about at least 3 steps here, 3 exposures, 1 or 2 exposure values apart from each other. If you have locked in your camera to a specific ISO, aperture, and time, then you are ready to go to the next step, to hold your Macbeth chart into the scene here. And when you have already focused on the texture, that you have the Macbeth chart in the same way to the light as the gray card, and a little bit out of focus is not a problem, because the average of this area is anyway the one that you want to have, and not all the noise in it. You could see that maybe here there's noise in it. So these values here, when you take a look to these numbers, they vary heavily. So the average is of course here always the wanted idea, and when you have blurred it by the focusing, then that's okay. So in the moment you have used your gray card to your advantage, then you get here these values in the best way, when the light hasn't changed during that. And another word to the light, it should be evenly distributed. It makes no sense when this little color chart or this white patch here has more light than this one here. You might not notice it, but in the moment we have here maybe something, a starting gradient of a shadow here, then the whole reading of the card will be thrown off. So a diffuser may be over the top if you want to diffuse the texture here, which I haven't in this case, is certainly a good idea to guarantee a very nice and even light here. Very important. And then you can capture already your texture. And you can see here clearly it would have been maybe more something like this here, because it was a white paint that went away, and you see here we get nearly everything here inside, but it's really squeezed. And when we go the 2 stops below our gray card, we lose all the darks here, and you see that here in the blues. And when I go to the white stuff here again, we have nearly no overcasting. We have here some specular highlights which goes over it, and then we have here our mid, where we have problems nearly in both directions here. Anyway, so what we need to do here is of course maybe to create an HDRI based on our method, but I want to go here just with one exposure into the rays and see what happens. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what we have to accomplish here. First, and I repeat this, to set up the camera based on something that is neutral and always the same. It will react of course to light, and that is why we change the values of the camera in a different way. And we can take our white balance from here. Yes, the white balance is normally not taken from a white card, because white is typically a case where we have clipped values, and when we have clipped values we can't really grab some white balance. So normally we can take the white balance from this one here, from this, or from this one. I wouldn't take the white here or from here. Many people prefer this one. I prefer this or this one. You will see me checking out sometimes all three to see if I have to do an average of that. Okay, when this is done, we go to this picture, and based on this card here, we can go then to export, and we export then the Color Checker Passport profile, which will be discussed of course in the post-production. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.